Hi guys, it's Michelle, and today's video is going to be yet another childhood ruining conspiracy theories video for you guys. Y'all already know I think these videos are so much fun. I just love talking about my favorite shows. It brings me a lot of nostalgia. Of course, some of these just absolutely ruin those shows and movies for us all, but nonetheless, I think they're super fun. So without further ado, let's get right into the theories. All right, we're gonna start with the movie that has all of the conspiracy theories always surrounding it. Coraline. I think this movie is just so strange and like creepy that it naturally is just gonna have a shit ton of conspiracy theories surrounding it. You know what I mean? But I saw this theory floating around on TikTok, and it was basically talking about the opening scene of Coraline when we see the other mother making the dolls. The scene in itself is super creepy, but it has an even creepier undertone than what I realized. I think that like the naked eye would probably miss this. I mean, I've seen Coraline multiple times and I completely miss this. And I think most people probably would, unless you know anything about being a mortician. So in the opening scene, we see the other mother making the dolls using presumably a sewing kit. I always thought this was a sewing kit. I never thought anything different of it. However, someone on TikTok pointed out that that is actually an embalming kit. Like an old-timey embalming kit. I'm like really not obsessed with that on a personal level. Like, that's scary. I mean, this embalming kit quite literally has a bone cutter. Like, what would the other mother need that for when she's literally just making dolls? Well, basically, conspiracy theorists believe that this embalming kit and like the whole scene of the other mother making the dolls is kind of a representation of what happens to all of the other mother's victims, obviously besides Coraline, because she allegedly escaped and was safe. But all of the other victims that the other mother has had, they all go to the other world and never leave, and they die there. The theory goes that essentially that this embalming kit is somewhat of a symbolism / foreshadow moment to show what Coraline's future could entail. When you think about it in the sense of the other mother assumed that she was going to kill Coraline because she had been successful with all of her past victims, because then it's kind of seen as like a ceremonial thing, like her making the dolls with the embalming kit is like her signifying that she knows she's using them to make a doll right now, but that's just like the kind of like eye of her prey. Like that's like what she's like looking to prey on. And then she knows in her heart that one day she'll use the embalming kit on the actual person that this doll represents. And that is so freaking dark for a children's movie. I hate it. I do. No. I also think Coraline, like in general, really loves foreshadowing. We actually see this quite a bit throughout the movie, but an interesting one that I wanted to point out has to do with the other mother's meals. So when the other mother cooks for Coraline and for the other father, like these just amazing meals that look so delicious, really enticed Coraline in the first place. I never noticed this, but a Reddit user pointed out the fact that other mother's plate is always empty. Whether they're eating dinner, breakfast together, whatever the case may be, only the other father and Coraline have food, but the other mother's plate always remains empty. And there actually is a reason for that, in that she obviously freaking feeds on the flesh of children. It was kind of like a foreshadow moment, which is really creepy and just nuts. Like, honestly, this movie is wild and so not a children's movie in my opinion, but let me know what you guys think of this theory. Definitely think that foreshadow is just such a big thing throughout the entirety of the film that I think that this embalming kit could definitely be like kind of a foreshadow, even that the other mother like uses in her own life. But let me know what you guys think. Next theory I want to talk about is kind of similar vibes of movies, is all of the Tim Burton films. I feel like we've talked about the theory. I don't really believe it, but there's a theory that every Tim Burton movie is actually connected. Every Tim Burton movie, I guess I just mean Frankenweenie, Corpse Bride, and Nightmare Before Christmas. Theory basically suggests that Victor and Sparky from Frankenweenie grow up to become Victor and Scraps from the Corpse Bride, which then that Victor dies and becomes Jack Skellington and Zero in The Nightmare Before Christmas. I never really liked this theory because I felt like it had no ground to stand on. It didn't really make sense. I felt like the characters were all very different. There just was no similarities other than that it's a Tim Burton movie, so obviously they look pretty similar. I do think is an interesting theory. Actually ties in none other than my favorite Christmas movie of all time, the Grinch. So there's a very interesting theory that the Grinch actually becomes Jack Skellington in the afterlife. Here's the part of the theory that I actually think makes a lot of sense, which is that Grinch is supposed to be dropped off in Halloween Town. Obviously, if you've ever seen the Grinch, at least the Jim Carrey version, you know that there was a strange wind blowing that night that the Grinch was born, or delivered rather. Obviously, the Grinch does not look like the other Whos. He is green and scary and mean and doesn't love Christmas, so perhaps he was accidentally dropped off in Christmas Town, aka Whoville, instead of being dropped off in Halloween Town where he was supposed to be. I just think that makes so much sense. It explains why the Grinch looks different and he essentially looks like a monster and is scary and hates Christmas. It all makes sense. Of course, the Grinch ended up learning to cope with the fact that he was different and love Christmas. He continues that the Grinch and Max in the afterlife become Jack Skellington and Zero. Because in the afterlife, he finally makes it to Halloween Town. I don't really know if it's supposed to be like an afterlife or a past life thing, like kind of like he got reincarnated into Jack Skellington. I'm not sure, but I do think that it's an interesting concept that the Grinch was supposed to be in Halloween Town the whole time, regardless if he's Jack Skellington or not. The theory continues that the Grinch in the afterlife becomes Jack Skellington. He's the king of Halloween Town, where he was supposed to belong the entire time. Then he stumbles upon Christmas Town and realizes that he loves Christmas so much because it reminds him of his past life as the Grinch. I think that this is a really interesting theory, but I would like to hear your guys' opinion on it. Honestly, any childhood ruining conspiracy theory that involves the Grinch, I'm here for it. All right, the next theory I want to talk about is all about Frozen. In Frozen, we all see the scene where Elsa accidentally freezes Anna as a child. And this is kind of like the turning point of why Elsa has to keep her powers concealed for the rest of her life. But what if there's a bit of a darker reason as to why her parents wanted her to conceal and not feel? So obviously we know Frozen takes place in the same universe as Tangled, and they both take place at the same time. We literally see Flynn Rider and Rapunzel at Elsa's coronation. Conspiracy theorists pointed out that what if when Elsa was a little girl, they heard the story about how a princess in a nearby kingdom got kidnapped because of her special powers. So in order to protect Elsa, Elsa's parents kind of used the whole Anna thing as an excuse as to why Elsa could no longer use her powers and she really needed to conceal them as best as she could. I actually think this makes so much more sense. I never understood why they didn't just like try to train Elsa to use her powers properly. Because like after she like hurt Anna, like I felt like it would be natural to like want to train to use the powers rather than keep her freaking locked up. Like that felt a little bit dramatic. But when you think about it from a parent who is concerned about like their child being kidnapped, it makes so much sense. I like 100% believe this theory. I think it's, especially if Rapunzel and Anna and Elsa are actually cousins, which that is like a whole nother separate theory that we've talked about before. That would make even more sense because they want to like protect Elsa from this evil witch who freaking just stole Rapunzel. Like I think this very makes sense theory. Please let me know what you guys think because I don't know. Like I said, I think it makes sense. The next theory is like a quick little theory about the movie Cars. But I think the Pixar theory is such an interesting conspiracy theory. I've done a video on it forever ago. If you guys want me to make like an updated one, let me know. I love the concept that all of the Pixar movies connect. We're going to be talking about it a little bit later with Monsters, Inc. It's part of the Pixar theory that the technology in Cars got so good, which is why there's no humans there because they didn't need them anymore. So they essentially killed them off. But a little dark piece of like conspiracy theory that I heard that really disturbed me was the concept that the reason that the cars have accents is because they've taken on the accent of the last person who drove them, which is just freaking dark when you think about them all being dead because there was no need for humans anymore. I kind of hate it, but let me know what you guys think. I don't know. I feel like it gives a very creepy vibe, Cars, that honestly maybe makes me more interested in watching it, but let me know. So speaking of the Pixar theory, let's talk about Monsters, Inc. So everyone grew up loving Monsters, Inc., but there is a dark conspiracy theory surrounding Monsters, Inc. that'll change the way you watch the movie. As we know from the film, during the scene where the Monsters Incorporated commercial was playing on Sully's TV, we hear something that actually kind of explains something pretty dark. The commercial says, carefully matching every child to their ideal monster to produce superior screams refined into clean, dependable energy. The entirety of the movie surrounds this concept of the monsters wanting to use the screams of children to have this like new sustainable energy to run Monstropolis and run their town and keep their town going. Reddit users came up with a theory that that means that they used to be using a dirtier, less sustainable energy. And what could that energy have been? The blood of children. Also probably true. Like, I feel like it makes a lot of sense because the blood of children, obviously it's like darker, like dirtier energy because it's not sustainable because it will run out. Basically, like the screams of children would be compared to like solar power, but then like the blood of children would be compared to like oil. I believe this theory. I hate it, but I believe it. It's so true. I just feel like there's no way that that theory is not true, and it gives me the ick and it freaks me out, but I do think that that was what they meant. I do think Monsters, Inc. is pretty dark, so let me know what you guys think. Next theory that has to do with Monsters, Inc. kind of ties more in with the Pixar theory, and it has to do with how the doors of the children's room in Monsters, Inc. are actually time portals to the past. There's a theory that the monsters were actually a result of radioactive exposure from a post-apocalyptic world. Basically, the fan theory goes that like there was like a nuclear war that occurred, and therefore like some mutations happened and humans ended up becoming monsters that we see in Monsters, Inc. But since they need children's laughter or screams to survive, they ended up having to come up with time travel using the doors. So when they're going through the doors to go to the children's rooms, they're going into the past. And I think this makes so much sense. And it also really adds up with the Pixar theory, because the Pixar theory believes that the movies all connect through Boo and that the doors are time portals, and Boo used this technology to go back in time and was actually the witch from Brave, because she has like visions of Sully in her home and she's like obsessed with bears. So that's kind of like the theory behind that. So many people believe that that witch is actually Boo, who must have learned the time travel through her friends Sully and Mike. I just think that this makes so much damn sense for them to be going back into the past instead of like just through portals to like the human world. I don't know. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because I just thought this was a very thought-provoking theory, because it kind of like changes the entire way you watch Monsters, Inc. when you think of Boo and everyone being from the past. I like it. I like it a lot, I will say. Speaking of things being from the past, we're going to talk about Aladdin. There is actually a theory that Aladdin takes place in the future. I think this theory is pretty interesting and probably accurate, at least. I don't know. We'll go into some theories about it, but basically there's a theory that Aladdin takes place over 10,000 years in the future in a post-apocalyptic world. So when we watch Aladdin, we're obviously like meant to think that this is set in the past just based on like the clothing, the areas, like it's just supposed to be in the past. However, there's a lot of proof that this actually takes place in the future after like a world war like situation, post-apocalyptic, completely like renewed world. And that is because the genie makes references to the 1990s, which you could say is an Easter egg because that's when this movie came out. It was like 92. How would the genie have like technology for neon lights and slot machines and know who people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jack Nicholson are? Like, how would he know that if not from being from 1990? I kind of believe it. I think it makes sense because the genie talks about being trapped for 10,000 years. So how would he understand any references to the 90s? So it makes sense that it actually takes place 10,000 years after 1992. I don't know. Let me know what you think. All right, the next conspiracy that we're going to talk about has to do with SpongeBob. I love SpongeBob theories. I think they are so fun. And this one I found very interesting, which is essentially the idea that SpongeBob is actually a reality TV show. That sounds like stupid because it's quite literally a cartoon, but follow me, it actually makes a lot of sense. So there's an episode of SpongeBob where SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs, and Squidward get stuck in the air vents at the Krusty Krab. When they come out into one of the rooms, it's a room filled with a bunch of monitors to hidden cameras that are hidden throughout the entirety of the Bikini Bottom. Which you could just be like, maybe Mr. Krabs is just a weirdo who's up to no good, which I do think is a possibility, but also conspiracy theorists pointed out that when they pan over to a camera crew who is like runs out the window 2 seconds later. So people believe that the narrator of SpongeBob actually hired a camera crew, and Mr. Krabs is the one who manages it and watches all the monitors so that the narrator of the show can create the show that is SpongeBob SquarePants. It's like kind of a Truman Show situation, and I kind of believe it. I think it makes sense. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts though, because I think it's like kind of a funny theory. But I kind of believe it. Like, you know what I mean? I think that makes sense, low-key. The next thing that I want to talk about that is so childhood ruining, I was so upset when I found this out, has to do with Boy Meets World. I feel like there is nothing more heartbreaking and childhood ruining than when you find out your cast of a favorite TV show are not friends in real life. Like, I don't know why something about it feels so personal. And I found out that Terry Hatcher from Desperate Housewives is not friends with all of the other Desperate Housewives, and they were all friends in real life except for her. It breaks my heart to a million pieces. TV show that always had great energy and the people always kept up with each other and even followed up later to do a sequel was Boy Meets World. It was widely understood that Ben Savage, Danielle Fishel, Ryder Strong, and Will Friedle all remained very good friends. That was until Danielle, Ryder, and Will began a podcast called Pod Meets World. They were talking about their experiences on the show, and a lot of people were confused why Ben Savage wasn't part of it. He wasn't really interested in it, but they still remained friends behind closed doors. And that is what we thought up until last month. So Danielle, Ryder, and Will did a variety interview where they basically talked about how they have not talked to Ben in 3 years. Ben was always super close with the cast. Like, even in 2019, Danielle Fishel's first son was born early, so he was in the NICU. He was always there for her and wanted to make sure she was doing okay. But the next year, Ben completely ghosted the three of them, which is crazy because they've known each other for over 30 years. Like, that's just not something you do. All three of them claimed that there was no big fight, there was no animosity towards them, and that Ben just completely stopped talking to them. Will actually sent Ben Savage a text saying, "I've known you for 30 years. What's going on? I'm going to call you every single day until you tell me not to call you anymore." He did that for an entire month. Will called Ben Savage with no answer and no response every single day, which is just really sad. I just wonder what the hell went down. Danielle Fishel said, "Speaking for myself, Ben and I may be estranged right now, but I will always love Ben and want what's best for him. Don't think that this is the end of our story, but only time will tell." This is just super sad and really heartbreaking, and a lot of people theorize that something deeper is going on with Ben. It's weird to me and like always a red flag when you start cutting out people, especially ones that you've known for so long. I don't know. Something about this just feels really, really off to me. And a lot of people have noticed that he's been like running for like governor or something. I don't even know. He's been getting into politics, but I don't really feel like it would make sense for it to have anything to do with that. Like, I get him not wanting to have anything to do with acting anymore, but like just your friends who you've known for 30 years and you're super close to just ghost them is weird. Like, that's so heartbreaking and so childhood ruining. Like, oh, Corey, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? I just hope they make up. I hope everything's okay. I don't know. It made me really sad. All right, the last theory I want to talk about has to do with iCarly. So one of my friends, Sawyer, actually posted a TikTok talking about this whole episode of iCarly where Spencer dates his old babysitter, which I do not remember this episode, but I think it's so crazy to me that this ever aired. Essentially, it's like a whole episode like talking about how Spencer starts dating his old babysitter, but like throughout their relationship, he treats her like he's still her babysitter, and then also she treats him like he's like a baby, and it's freaking weird. Like, it's a gross dynamic. It just makes such an interesting conspiracy theory about Dan Schneider. Once again, we always talk about this man, and I always will, because I think he is so weird, and it's so weird to me that he worked with so many children over the years. I just feel like this like concept of an episode shows the creepiness that Dan Schneider is. I find it to be highly disturbing that ever existed. I think Dan used a lot of his shows to make dirty jokes and say uncomfortable things and have uncomfortable storylines that he like felt and wanted to put on TV. And that is disturbing because we all just sat back and watched it, and like it was normalized in our heads because we were children watching these shows, and we're obviously impressionable. It like gives me the ick severely when I think about it. I'm really freaked out by it because there are so many. Oh my gosh, Nickelodeon is like #1 for the amount of dirty freaking jokes that existed nobody talks about, and I just hate it. I hate it. It's gross. I can't believe that we watched all these shows and like never thought anything about it. It's kind of scary to see like what people are willing to put on TV to manipulate children and wanting children to see these things. It really grosses me out that these like people like Dan Schneider were ever working with children and also working to create shows for children in general. Because these like are shows that like your parents would just put on and not pay attention to, maybe. Kind of concerning, but let me know what you guys think about all of these theories. But that is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have any different TV shows or movies that you want me to talk about that might have some childhood ruining theories behind them. I'd love to know. So that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week, and I will see you guys later. Bye.